All right, welcome back. This is video 2 for the student program. So let's get started making the changes from program 5 to program 9. So the first thing we want to do is we want to update our greeting. Our greeting is going to be a little different. You can take a look at the sample output. Let's see, where did I put the sample output? I think it's here. Obviously, I would like you guys to decide how you want to do your sample output, but I just made I didn't put so much information. I just this is my greeting now, and then this is going to be in my display. So let's fix our code here, and you can, put your own personality in it, but for the greeting, I'm just going to take out all of this part because we're adding some new menu options. So I'm just making my greeting a little smaller. And now I need to add the new menu options here in my display menu function. So my display menu function, I'm going to have to add the, so let's here, update it for these other things. I'm going to pause the recording and finish this update so you don't have to watch me type. So this is a good time for you also. You need to change your options to include the P to print the list, the O for 1, etc. So I'm going to make those changes. I'll pause and come back when I'm done. Okay, I'm back. So now I have updated my menu to include the new menu options. I haven't done anything with them yet, but I do want to test now that I've changed my greeting function. I've changed my display menu function. They're still the same, but they're a little bit different. So let's just build it and make sure that it works as expected. So my greeting function does that. All right, so one thing I want to do is I'm not going to be entering the current ID for the student here, so let's get rid of that. It's going to be done differently because we're going to be using a function. So we'll just set this so we don't have an issue for right now to something. Let's try again. We just want it, all we're checking right now is our greeting and our display menu function. All right, we have our greeting. So our display, P or P, O, A, C, to add a new student to the list, that's different, or Q to quit. And that is printing as expected. So now we need to add our other options here in our menu. So we have a couple more options. Those other two options are P and O, and N is going to be different. So here we're going to change what happens at N. This is where we're going to add a new student to the list. If you notice, I'm not doing anything too quickly, just one thing at a time. Now I also need to add our other options. So I want to make sure that I'm using else ifs here. So this is going to be an else, and this is going to be an else. So our first option is going to be P or P. And on that option, we're going to printf, print the list. Obviously, we're not doing anything yet. We're just, setting up our thing. Then our next one is going to be O or O. And that's going to be print one student on the list. Print one student. Okay. And we're going to have to get the index and all that to do that. But this is just making our menu. And this is going to also change. So we don't want to really, we're going to change the way we do this function. So all we want to do is make sure our menu print, this is going to be add points. And C, we're going to actually change that function as well. So We don't want to have any issues, so this is going to be calculate. And this is going to be add a new student, and everything else is not recognized, and our count is going to be also different here, so we can get rid of that. So now we just want to make sure our menu is working, make sure we have if, else if, else if, else if, else, and let's test it. All right, so if I do P, print the list, O, print one student, A, add points, C, calculate, N, add a new student, R, not recognized, X, not recognized, Q, quit. All right, so now it's time to add our struct. So what we want to do is we want to add a struct. So you go all the way up here at the top above your function prototypes and you define your structure. You type in type def, struct. You'll see they're blue. Those are keywords. And then inside of here, you're going to add your fields. And the name of our new struct or our new data type is called student. So we're going to add the fields in here. We're going to have a character array for the last name. I don't think anyone's last name is larger than size 30. We will have a character array for the first name. We will have an integer for the ID. We will have an integer for the point count. You can try and initialize to 0 here, but we are going to fill it with, I think that you can, that in the C style structs, you can't do it that way. We're going to actually fill it with 5 students. So that's going to be our first thing we're going to do. So we just want to put the data here. So we have a double points. And we have a double average. All right, so this is my new struct. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And I don't see any errors. And our first function we want to do, let's take our assignment out here, which has all of the functions listed. So you're gonna, if you take a look at it, we do have, if you see the calculate average is going to change, the add points is going to change. The greeting is the same and the display menu is still the same, but we have all of these other functions to add. If you want to, you can go ahead and add all the prototypes. I like to add just one at a time. So I'm just going to go ahead and add one at a time and implement it one at a time. You can decide how you want to do it. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to put 5 students into our list. So this is our function prototype. We need to go down here and do the implementation. I'm going to put this all the way at the bottom because it's kind of a lengthy function. And all we need to do is we're going to have an array of students. So please go back and review the very first video that goes over this assignment. And we're going to go to list at index 0. That's a student dot first name. Now, because we are doing a character array, in C, you can't assign it a string. You have to use a string member function called strcpy. So we're going to string copy our first name. I have my, let's do my first one here because I already have it. Then I don't have to reinvent the wheel, hopefully. All right, it's not in that file. It must be in this file. Nope, that's the output. This file. All righty, so I went ahead and already did this, so I'll do the first one here. All right, so this is my first student I put in there is Amy Winehouse. Now you will notice that I have red squiggly lines here. That's because the fields, I use different names for the fields. so I'm going to go ahead and use the same names that I already used. I have points total. Let me put it up here so I know what it is. You can name the fields. Again, I just, so this was called points total. This is grade average. And this is grade count. That way, when I copy and paste the rest of them in, it's not going to be a big deal. So let's go back down here to my function. This is where I'm going to add 5 students to the list. So this is an array assignment. So we do want to practice, doing an array. So this list at index 0 is a student. .id is an integer. List at index 0 is a student. .last name is a character array. Because I'm using C, I need to use string copy to assign that. And I need to go back up here and pound include string.h. All right, so what I'm going to do now is this is my first student, so I need to add 5 students, list at index 0, list at index 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to pause this video now and let you guys and add the rest of my students. So you can also pause it and add your students and then come back after. All right, welcome back. I've now added my 5 students to the list. I have it all nice and spread out. This is, this is my first student who's at index 0, my second student at index 1, etc. So now I have filled my list with 5 students, but now I need to go into my main function and declare my list. So I go all the way back up here to my main function. We're going to be doing things a little differently. So let's, we don't really need to worry. We need our menu, but we don't need the ID or the count or the points because those are fields when we might need them, but right now we don't need them. Those are fields in our student. So all we need to do right now is declare a list. So we have a student list. I do believe that I said to use a preprocessor directive for the size. So we're going to pound define size. I think it's 50. I'm not really sure, but whatever it said in the instructions. So we're going to make an array size 50. This is our student list. So we have our data type is student. We have an array of students called list, and we're capable of storing 50 students. Then we have an integer for our student count, and it's going to be 0 because we have not put any students into our list. Then what we're going to do is call our function. What is that function called? 5 students. We're going to call our 5 students function. We're going to pass it the list. It's going to jump out of our main function and all the way down here. And it's going to, this list is an array, so it's a pointer, and it's going to put 5 students into our list. And then it's going to jump back up here to our main function. So of course, now we need to say that our count is 5, right? So we start out, we have our empty list. This is for the menu function. We have our empty list. We've added 5 students to our list. And so our count is 5. So we can build it and test it. But the truth is, if we hit P, nothing's going to happen. We don't know where our students are hopefully in our list, but until we actually do the function to print them onto the screen, we don't have the ability to really see the students in the list. So that's the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our function to print the students onto the screen. So I have to, all right, so here is our next function. Our next function is print the student list. So go back here, add the prototype. So this is print the student list. And so let's now go down here and implement this function. So how do you print the student list? Well, the student list has a lot of information. So you start, we have an I, and you're going to use the for loop that goes through an array from I equals 0, I less than student count, one by one through the list. So we're going to go through one by one through the list. This is going to take the list, and then it's also going to take the number of students in the list and one by one print them onto the screen. How do you print them onto the screen? You use printf. So we'd say printf. Okay, it depends what you want to put first. Maybe you want to put index. Oh, I would put the index first. Index is %d. The reason we're putting the index is because we are going to care about that later, because that's how you're going to select which one you want to modify. But then we also have all the fields. So we have the last name, first name, ID, points. I don't remember how many fields are in there. Sometimes I have to do like this so that I can remember. Just put it here. So we have the index, then we have the last name, which is %s. So it's going to be list at index I dot last name. Then we have first name, %s. I don't think we need to do a double thingy here. All right, we got list at index I dot. And if you type in list and you go index I dot, then it gives you this pop-up. So you can add the first name. Then we have ID, list at index I dot ID. And it's very, these data types we've already been using. So %s, %d, and then you have the grade count. So we have the grade count. Grade count, and then this is going to be 0.2f. 0.2f. So then we have the points, point total. And you can format this however you want. And one more finally, we have average, grade average. All right, so you can format it. You can use, you can use \T for, like a colon and a \T to tab, and a colon and a \T to tab. So what you want to do is you want to see how it formats, see how it looks, and then, make it how you want it to look. So let's make sure that it works. We can build it, but unless we call this function, we're not going to be able to know if it works. And we do want to call this function based on P. So you just need to pass it the list and the count. And hopefully it's going to work when we select the number P, the letter P. So let's give it a try. All right, so let's hope it works. We hit P. All right, so if you notice, I did tab in some places, and in some places I didn't, and I have colons there that I don't like. So I wouldn't be happy with this, and I would have to go back and fix it. So I'm just going to pause real quick here and fix my formatting. I also recommend that you fix your formatting. So let me just pause the video for a minute. Okay, I'm back. I've fixed my formatting. So I use some tabs here. So if you have a shorter, you might have to put 2 tabs, and you can just play with it and get it to look how you like. So if I build it and I test it, and now I select P, it looks much nicer. Each one that's printed out, it's lined up, tabbed over. It doesn't have to be like that, but that's my recommendation to get it a way that you like it. All right, so now I have finished my menu option to print. The next one is to print one student. So if I go back to my file here, I'm going to get the function to print one student. So let's go and add it here to our prototypes and go down here and do the code to print one student. So this is practice, pass by copy. You're just going to pass, it's going to make its own copy of the student, and it's just going to print one student. So we could take all of this here from here, but instead of passing the list, you're passing one student. So you can just copy here, one student first name, one student last name, one student for each one of these. So again, this is learning here. So this is to help you guys to understand the difference between one student that's in the list, where you have printing an entire list, and one student where this is making a copy of just one student and then printing it. And of course, in here, you could either print it like this, each one, or you actually could call the print one student function here and pass it your student. So this is an option. You could either, once you have your print one student function, you could get rid of all of these, and you're not even gonna, this is just motivation to understand. You want to keep the index, but now it's going to call the print one student, and you're going to pass it the student here, and then it's going to call this function and print it. Let's test it and see if that works. Either way is fine. You're not required to do it either way. I just wanted to show you, give you some motivation about functions, and you will see it's doing the exact same thing. It's going through the list and printing each student, but instead of printing each student over and over again, each time it's going to call the print one student, pass it this current student that it's on. This is going to make a copy of that student and print it onto the screen. So that's an option you can have for your code, and it makes the code, more streamlined. But now we also have the menu option of printing one student. So we do have the menu option here to print one student. So how is that going to work? Well, we have a count, right? So we want to make sure that the students that you are going to only print a student that, it's very, that is inside of the list that exists in the list, right? You don't want to print a student that is outside of the list. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to use a do while to do that. So we're going to declare here a variable called index. Oops. We're going to do this. This is an index for one student. So I'm going to call this index 1. All right, so because we are going to use the index for our other functions, but this is the index to print one student. So I'm calling this the index 1. So what you want to do here is if you want to print one student, you have to have the user tell you what index of the student that they want to print, right? So most likely you're going to print the student list so that we don't need to do that. We're going to print the student list to do the other index, but here you just want to make sure that they print an index that's in the right range. So why would you want to print the whole list if you want to print only one student? So if you want to print only one student, you need to do you need to ask the user to tell you which index that you want. So you're going to do a do while to make sure that the index is in the right range, right? So you're going to printf. Enter the index. So right now you could even say between %d and between 0, you could say between 0 and %d. So you want them to enter an index between 0 and %d. And how do we know what indexes we have? We have student count, but student count index 5 is 1 past it. So it would be between student count -1, right? So we want to enter an index between 0 and student count -1. So if we have 5 students in there, we have index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But then you also want it, so you're going to scan F into that index, %d, into the, where's the index 1 variable. And you could just say, okay, enter it, but you really want to enforce and make sure that the user does not enter out of range, because if they enter something out of range, it's going to do something strange. It's not going to have anything to print, which we can try it. Let's just try it really quick. So we're going to tell the user to print in a range, then we'll add the do while after, and then you're going to call the function, which is print. What is the function called? Print one student. Okay. Print one student. I don't even know what's going to happen if we go out of range, so that's why we're going to give it a try. We're going to pass it the student that's at location list, index 1. Remember that list at any index is a student. So let's try it with a student that exists, and then let's try it with a student that doesn't exist. So let's build it. Run it. All right, so print one student, we hit O. What is the index of 2? So that's going to print Stanley Steamer. He's at index 2. Now let's try to print something that's out of range. So I wanted to show you this. So it does, there is, because our array is size 50, it will try to print something, but because it has not been initialized to anything, it's going to print a bunch of nonsense that's not going to be any useful to you. So we want to make sure that the user prints in the range that we have. So that's why we're going to add a do while here. So we're going to enforce that they're going to print a select. So if they select a index that is less than 0, whoops, or they select an index that is greater than our range, we're going to ask them to please select something else. So see this? So this is if they select a negative value for the index, or they select a value that is greater than 4. So this is just a do while loop that's going to enforce that they select an index that's in our range, because we only want to print one student that is in our range. So let's see what happens. I hit 8. It's just telling me I have to pick something between 0 and 4, and that is working as expected. The last thing I'm going to do in this video is we're going to add a new student to our list, and then I'll do the next video in which I will do the calculations. So how do we add a new student to our list? We have a function for that, which is in the assignment. Add one student. So we need to add this function. And then we're going to be doing select the index and then do the calculations. So that's going to be in another video because these videos tend to get too long. All right, so how do we add a student to the list? Let's add this function down here. All right, so to add a student to the list, we have our count and we have our list. So all we need to do is we need to prompt for the information one by one. So we want to say printf, enter first name, and then we're going to scanf into the first name. Then we're going to get the last name, scanf into the last name, and we're going to get the ID. And those are the only things that we can fill in because the rest are going to have to be calculated, I believe. We have the grade count. Yes. So we can set the list at index student count. So go back and look at the first video. If we have 4 students and student count is 5, then 5 is the first empty one. So we want to do, we want to set the points total is equal to 0. We also want to set the grade count equal to 0. And we also want to set the average equal to 0 because they haven't been calculated yet. But what we will do is we will scanf into with %s into the list first name, and we can scanf. I would put a space here. We're ignoring white space into %s into the list last name. So you're going to ask for the first name, scan into the first name. You're going to ask for the last name, scan into the last name. You're going to ask for the ID and scan into the ID, which is %D. Now, because ID is a integer, you have to put the ampersand, but with %s, you don't put the ampersand. So this is how you add one student. You pass your list. This is a pointer. You pass your count. This is a copy. You go to, so if you have 4 and count is 5, 5 is going to be the first empty one. You're going to scan in the first name, scan in the last name, scan in the ID, and then set all of these to 0. So how do we add one student? It's quite simple. It's right here. When they select A, you're going to call your add one student function. Oops. You're going to pass it the list. You're going to pass it the count, which is called student count. And then a very, very important thing you need to do here is you need to add one to the student count after you've added it. So if you put it at location 5, then this is 6. Then the next one will go at location 6. You change it to 7. So this should work. If we test it, we should be able to add a student. Oh, add one student returns. Oh, okay. this was just practice. When you add one student is going to add, actually, you're not going to add the one here. You're going to add it in here and return it. That way you're going, so that was just a teaching thing. So if it comes in at 5, the student's going to go at location 5, you're going to update it to 6, and then you're going to return that. So that way it's all part of the same function. So, and it's for practice. So we have our student count is going to start at 5, you add 1, it goes up to 6. So I just did that as an exercise to practice and remind you that after you add one to the list, you need to update the count. So let's try it again. And make sure it works as expected. We print our list. We print one student at index 2. Okay, we print another student at index 0. It's working. Now we want to add a new student to the list. Enter the first name, enter the last name, enter the ID. All right, so now we want to print our list and see if that's been added to our list, and it has. So there we go. And in the next video, we are going to learn how to select the student and do the calculation.